I don't know how many times you've read this and thought, what in the world is Paul talking about? How dare he say I should be content with being unmarried, or that it's good for me to be unmarried? Hi and welcome to Graceful. My name is Chimezie. Today we're continuing our series on navigating faith and singleness. And I would like to talk about contentment in singleness. That's a very serious word. And if I'm being honest, that's a trigger word too. I know that it's been a trigger word for me. And I've learned some lessons along the way that I would like to share with you. First of all, let's see what the Bible says about contentment. In 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 7 and 8, Apostle Paul writes, he says, "I wish that all of you were as I am, but each of you has your own gift from God. One has this gift, another has that. Now to the unmarried and the widows I say, it is good for them to stay unmarried as I do." I don't know how many times you've read this and thought, what in the world is Paul talking about? How dare he say I should be content with being unmarried, or that it's good for me to be unmarried? He has no clue what he's talking about. But in this passage, really, what I see here is that Paul is acknowledging singleness, and he is in fact celebrating singleness as something to aspire to, which is really weird in today's culture, and even in the Christian circle in the church, where you find that if you're single, especially if you have gone past what is considered a young adult age, so basically anything over 30, or in some cases you have grace and it's extended to 35, but anything above that age, it's hard to find where you belong in a church. So it's really quite challenging for me sometimes to actually read this passage and accept what Paul is saying here. Yeah, that can be pretty hard to swallow. I found it sometimes to be a difficult pill, and I have told Paul off a time or two. Maybe you have as well. But I think more than just saying it will be good for you to be unmarried, as he is, that Paul is saying that there's something about finding contentment in singleness. Here he's qualifying singleness as a gift to be had, something to aspire to. And yeah, I find that conflicting as well sometimes, as I'm guessing a lot of us single women do. But let's hear something else Paul is saying. In Philippians 4, verse 11 to verse 13, Paul says, "Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me." And here, Paul is really just honing in on that concept of contentment. He's saying, learn to be happy, learn to be content in whatever situation you find yourself. And one thing that I've learned over time is that discontentment doesn't bring your desire any closer to you. It just makes it difficult, or more difficult, to walk in the current situation that you're in. And when discontentment comes in, automatically that's your joy being taken away from you, and little things start to irritate you or upset you, and things that may have been of no consequence up until that point become magnified. And sometimes I think that discontentment can be difficult to identify for what it really is. I remember sometime in late 2023, I'd gone to church, and this was a Wednesday night, so it was a meeting, a smaller group meeting that night in the church. And I was in the band for that night to lead in the congregation in worship. And there was just 3 of us in the band. So there was a drummer who was going to just play the acoustic drums. There was the worship leader, who's also a guitarist. And then there was me as a backup singer. And I remember that after we'd practiced, we 3 just came together and we decided to pray for each other. And so we each went around saying what we would like prayer for. And I remember myself saying that I'm just feeling off and I really don't know what it is. Could you just pray for me that whatever this is, that God just, helps me through that and takes that away. And the person who prayed for me, I remember him saying, God, could you please help her to be content? At the moment he said that prayer, like in my mind, something went off and I saw myself just mentally saying, that's it. That's what it is. It's discontentment. And that prayer, first of all, was very liberating because he heard what I wasn't even saying. And I know that he was sensitive as well to really understand what the root issue was. And I remember going away that day just really asking God, what's the cause of this contentment and how is it impacting my life right now? And I realized that I was complaining a lot. I was upset about so many things. I was to people that I was close to and I trusted, I would even say, oh, I'm not happy about this, I'm not happy about that. Like there was just so much complaint all around me, coming from me. And I realized that at the root of all of that was just discontentment, and that the things that I was calling out as the issues were not the real issues. And it was something that I needed to take to God to say, what's going on in this season? What's at the root? How can I deal with it? And I realized that it came primarily, but not solely, but primarily from just feeling like there was no relationship on the horizon. I was as single as I'd been the year before and the year before that and the year before that. And I think I found out that someone that I knew was getting married, and I was happy for them, but there was this tug of war happening in my mind, being happy for them, but also saying, why isn't it happening for me? And I'm thankful because I was able to identify what that issue was so that I could deal with it. And the moment I gave that discontentment to God, my mood, everything just lifted, my joy came back, and I found myself that the things that I complained about before, the things I'd been going on and on about, I just realized, you know what? It's actually not a big deal. And so that's what discontentment can do. It clouds our vision. It makes us see everything critically and not objectively. And it takes grace away from us as well, because we start to nitpick at every single thing, even the slightest things that people do that we normally wouldn't even give a second thought. Those things become magnified because we are discontent. But Paul is challenging us and saying, whatever is going on in your life, whether you have plenty, whether you have everything you want and need, whether you are in lack, just be content. And I think as for us as singles, as single women especially, a lot of our discontentment comes, that's the root, that singleness. But there's so much happening in our lives that we could be celebrating as well. I've told myself that I can choose to see the joys and the positives of being single, because I do believe that I'm not always going to be single. Someday God is going to send the right man my way, someone I'm going to be right for as well. But in this season, how am I maximizing it? I don't want to get married and look back and wish I'd lived this season differently. So whatever I would like to be able to see when I look in hindsight, I want to live it now so that I will have that as part of the testimony. Another thing that I found is that when you're discontent, and I might have said this previously, it takes your joy away. And I've just come to that place now where I guard my joy jealously. And the devil is always going to try to take your joy away from you. He's always going to want you to look at the things that aren't going the way you want in your life, rather than you focusing on the things that are. And it's your job to silence him and silence any negative voices telling you that the season you're in is not enough and that there is nothing to celebrate in that season, because there's so much you can celebrate in this season. You can have very robust, very healthy relationships with so many groups of women, especially, that can be very, very enriching and can really fill your life. Find ways to serve others, serve in your local church, serve in your community, soup kitchens. There's lots of charity organizations that are looking for volunteers, because when you take the focus away from yourself, it actually brings another level of fulfillment and it helps to fuel your contentment, because you're not putting all of the focus on yourself. So let me read Paul's writing again. Paul says, "Not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am in to be content. I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me." Another version says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And I just want you to remember that Jesus is always ready to help you. He wants you to ask him for help. He wants you to depend on him, because in truth, you can't find that contentment on your own. If you search for it within yourself, what you might just end up finding is happiness, which is dependent on what is going on in your life right now. But true joy goes beyond your current situation. And Jesus is there, the Holy Spirit is there to help you to be content in the situation that you're in, remembering that it is a season and one day is going to come to an end. And you want to be able to look back at this season and say that you gave your all, you lived your very best life in this season, you didn't hold anything back, and you're ready for the season that's ahead. I hope this has blessed you. I hope this has encouraged you. I'd love to hear your own experience of how you're finding contentment in your life. What's working, what's not working, what's some practical steps you've taken or are taking or want to take to share with the community. So please leave a comment to let us know how you're going. Also, please like, subscribe, and if you know any lady that this content will help, please share it with them. Remember, you are valued, you are loved, and you're capable of extraordinary things. Until next time, take care, stay true to yourself, and keep shining brightly. Bye.